Hello, welcome to Biology, the scientific study of life. Homology, biogeography, and the fossil record. The two examples you have just read about show that natural selection can bring about change rapidly enough to be observed directly. In addition, Darwin's theory provides a cohesive explanation for observations made by researchers in the fields of anatomy, embryology, molecular biology, biogeography, and paleontology. Homology. Darwin's concept of descent with modification can explain why certain characteristics in related species have an underlying similarity, even though they may have very different functions. Such similarity resulting from common ancestry is known as homology. Anatomical homologies. The view of evolution as a remodeling process accounts for the finding of comparative anatomy. The comparison of body structures between species for forelimbs of all mammals, including humans, cats, whales, and bats, show the same arrangement of bones from the shoulder to the tips of the digits. Notice that. Digits, even though these appendages can have very different functions, lifting, walking, swimming, and flying, such striking anatomical resemblances would not exist if these structures had arisen in each species. The arms, forelegs, flippers, and wings of different mammals are homologous structures that represent variations on a structural theme that was present in their common ancestor. Notice that. Comparative embryology, the comparison of early stages of animal development, reveals additional anatomical homologies not visible in adult organisms. For example, at some point in their development, all vertebrate embryos have a tail posterior to the anus, as well as a structure called pharyngeal throat pouches. Notice this figure. These embryonic structures develop into homologous structures with very different functions, such as gills in fishes and parts of the ears and throat in humans. Some of most intriguing homologous structures are vestigial organ structures of marginal, if any importance of the organism. Vestigial organs are remnants of structures that served important functions in the organism's ancestors. For instance, the skeletons of some snakes retain vestiges of the pelvis and leg bones of walking ancestors because limbs are a hindrance to a snake's way of life. Natural selection has favored snake ancestors with successively smaller limbs. We would not expect to see these vestigial structures of snakes and an origin separate from other vertebrate animals. Because evolution can modify only existing structures and functions, it often produces less than perfect results. For example, the human knee joint and spine derive from ancestral structures that supported four-legged mammals. Few people reach old age without experiencing knee or back problems. If these structures had originally evolved in animals that were bipedal, we would expect these parts of the body to be less subject to injury. The anatomical remodeling that enabled our ancestor to stand upright was apparently constrained by our evolutionary history. Molecular homologies. Biologists also observe similarities among organisms at the molecular level. All forms of life use the same genetic machinery of DNA and RNA, and the genetic code is essentially universal. Because the genetic code is shared by all organisms, it is likely that all species descended from a common ancestor. Molecular homologies also go beyond a shared code. Organisms as dissimilar as humans and bacteria share many genes that have been inherited from a distant common ancestor, like the forelimbs of humans and whales. These genes have often acquired different functions, homologies and the tree of life. The Darwinian concept of an evolutionary tree of life can explain the homologies that researchers have observed. Some homologies, such as genetic code, are shared by all species because they date to the deep ancestral past. Homologies that evolved more recently are shared only within smaller branches of the tree. For example, all tetrapods, from the Greek tetra, four, and pods, foot. The vertebrate branch, consisting of amphibians, reptiles, including birds, and mammals, possess the same basic five-digit lamp structure illustrated in this figure. Notice that. Okay. Those homologies result in a nested pattern, with all life sharing the deepest layer and each smaller group adding homologies to those they share with larger groups. This nested pattern is exactly what we would expect if life evolved and diversified from a common ancestor. Anatomical resemblances among species are generally reflected in their molecules, in their genes, DNA, and genes products, protein. On the next page, this one comparison or compares the amino acid sequence of a human hemoglobin, the protein that transports oxygen in the blood, with the hemoglobin sequences of other vertebrates. The data show the same pattern of evolutionary relationships that researchers find when they compare over proteins or assess relationships based on non-molecular methods such as comparative anatomy. The Darwinian view of life predicts that the different kinds of homologies in a group of organisms will all tend to show the same branching pattern through their evolutionary history. Notice that comparison of protein found in diverse vertebrates. Species, human. Notice also this is all present percent of amino acids that are identical to the amino acids in a human hemoglobin polypeptide. Human 100%, notice that, and monkey type of monkey, rhesus, this type called 95%, and mouse 87%, chicken 69%, and frog 54%, and lamprey 14%. Oh, this is also kind of fish, small fish, or type of fish, freshwater fish. Okay, thanks for listening.